beautiful joy and beautiful honor and blessing to be together in this Unity Earth program. And the earth is one. We are united. In Sanskrit, it said Vasudev Kutumbakam, which is translated as the world is a family. But literally what it means is Vasundhara, that goddess of the earth. We are all her family. So yes, we are all one family, but we're not just a family in a vacuum. We are the family of Mother Earth. So it's so beautiful to be together, and especially to have this opportunity to talk about water with peace. Because of course, with no water, there cannot be peace, whether internally, whether in our communities, or whether in our world. In fact, the former Secretary General of the United Nations stated very clearly that the next world war was going to be a war for water. So whether we're looking at violent conflict between nations, or whether we're simply looking at each of our individual and collective ability to live a peaceful, joyful, meaningful life, if there's no water, there is no health, and without health, there's no peace, there's no joy, there's no progress, there's nothing. There's illness and death. And we're at a position right now where, as we speak about the importance of peace, the importance of ending violent conflict, nonetheless, more people suffer and die every single year due to lack of clean water than due to all forms of violence combined. So you take war, you take terrorism, you take drug-induced violence, you take gender-based violence, you take all forms of violence combined. The sum total still pales in comparison to the number of those who are suffering and dying simply due to lack of clean water. So as we look today at strategies from local to global, what we realize is that in order for there to be access to water, there has to be water. Equal distribution and access comes only after there's actually enough water, enough clean water to be evenly distributed. And so the only strategy that really is going to work is a strategy that addresses both the ground level and also the grand level, the local and the global. But let's start on the individual level, on that local level, because while policies are critical, while the role of our government leaders, our corporate leaders are critical, the role of each of us is just as critical, if not more. And a lot of us have a lot more control over what we each do than over what our elected officials or the elected officials of other countries may do. So let's look at what we call the ground level. Strategies that each of us can implement. Number one, very simple. Keep riverbanks clean. In so much of the world, the banks of our rivers become dumping grounds for waste, dumping grounds for trash, dumping grounds for sewage. So if you live near a body of water, work to keep it clean. Let this be a Saturday morning activity. Let it be what you do for your birthday party, for your children's birthday party. Let it be what you inspire and engage your community to do. Pick up trash. Clean those banks. And of course, it's not only on the actual banks of the river, because each of our streets, our alleyways, if those are full of trash and pollutants, well, eventually all of that ends up into our water. So it means, number one, we take care of pollution. Number two, plant trees. The importance of planting trees cannot be overstated. So much of the water that we have comes not just from glaciers. We all think about sources of water as glaciers, and there are. But not all of the water comes from glaciers. So much of the fresh water that we have actually comes from mountain springs, which are fed and created by trees. For example, I live on the banks of the Ganga River, where, yes, we've got the Gomukh Glacier giving us that sacred water. But the amount of water that comes out of the glacier is tiny compared to the volume of water in the riverbed downstream, when all of the tributaries, all of the other streams from the mountains merge into Ganga. And those are all tree-fed, mountain-fed streams. So plant trees. Again, a perfect birthday activity, a perfect Saturday morning activity, a perfect gift to give people for their birthdays. Plant a certain number of trees in their name, in their honor. And if you don't want to do it personally, no problem. There's so many organizations around the world that are planting trees. You can do it through them. But to the extent that you can actually get hands-on involved, then it reconnects our heart to Mother Earth. Number three, ensure that your local municipality isn't dumping waste into your water sources. And this is also very critical, because some of it is directly what we do, and some of it is what happens through our municipalities. So pay attention, be engaged, be aware, be conscious. Where does your sewage go? When your trash gets picked up, where does it go? And if you don't like where it goes, if you're not satisfied with the way that your local municipality is taking care of waste, well, get together as community action. Change it. Every great movement in the world has been movements of people, ordinary people, who care about bringing change. Next, change how we eat, change how we dress, change how we shop. Every single day, that which we put in our bodies, that which we put on our bodies, our food and our clothes, have a huge impact on water in the world. There isn't time to go into all of the details, but a meat-based diet, animal agriculture, beef, chicken, pork, all of the non-vegetarian foods are one of the greatest reasons for the water shortage that we have. They are one of the greatest wasters of water. Just to give you an example, the amount of water that goes into one meal of hamburgers is the same amount of water that you use in bathing for 6 months. Chicken is about a third. Chicken is about 2 months, which means that if you sit down to a meal of burgers, You've got to be prepared not to bathe for 6 months to offset that water. If you sit down to a meal of chicken, you have to be prepared to not bathe for 2 months. So go vegetarian. At least if not 100% of the time, go veg as much as you possibly can. Every meal has a huge impact. But it isn't only vegetarian or non-vegetarian. Go online, there's charts that are so easily available. What are the foods that take up the most amount of water? For example, here in India, one of the things that we see is this preference for rice over other grains is contributing to a very significant water issue. They're trying to grow rice in places that have no water. So agriculture, what we eat, be a conscious eater. Fashion. The fashion industry is one of the greatest polluters of our water source. But there's all kinds of alternatives. Now you can dress in beautiful fashion that's organic, that's fair trade, that's eco-friendly. It simply requires us to be conscious, to live consciously, to live with awareness, to live mindfully. So make these decisions mindfully. And if we come together in these movements, we can create a huge change. I remember when I was growing up and Greenpeace ran this dolphin-safe tuna campaign. There was a huge movement of how the tuna industry was killing dolphins in their nets. And I remember being a young kid in school where everybody ate tuna fish sandwiches. No child would allow their parents to buy tuna that wasn't dolphin safe. It had to have that dolphin safe label on it. I remember being a teenager when Coors beer wouldn't pull out of apartheid South Africa. What all of the political pressure could not achieve, economic pressure did. There was this massive boycott of Coors beer. And so these are just two really simple, easy examples of what people's movements of using the power of their money to buy that which is sustainable, that which is healthy, that which is good for the planet, has made huge differences. And now is the time for each of us to do that. We need to vote. If your leaders are not treating the earth the way that you want them to, vote in new leaders. So we vote with our votes, and we vote also with our notes. Dollars, euros, rupees, pounds. What are you using your money to purchase? And lastly, as time is running very short, but lastly, this grand level. We need to ensure that our policymakers, the owners, the heads of multinational corporations, that they are acting in alignment with our values, with our ethics, with a protection and preservation of the planet's water. And through those votes and through those notes, we need to ensure that we are putting that pressure on them to do so. And yeah, it takes work. But you know, a lot of religious traditions have a practice of what they call tithing, where people give 10% of their income to the church, for example. I'm not asking for that. But give 10%. Can each of us give 10% at least of our time to actually working for water? We get up every day, we go to work so that our children have better opportunities, a better life. But if we don't provide them with water, it doesn't matter what great education you give them, what cars, what jobs, what careers. Because if there isn't clean water to drink, nothing else matters. So let's start a movement of tithing for water. 10% of our time being spent to work for water. If we all do that, really sincerely on the ground level and pushing toward the grand level, we will be able to turn things around. And it's the most important and the greatest gift, as well as the most critical responsibility that we have to today and to tomorrow. Thank you so much to Unity Earth, to Ben, to Arena, to their entire team for bringing this really critical and really beautiful program together for all of us.